think you had a practical example from an airline that you wanted to lead off with.
Yeah, so as discussed, there's a lot of different business scenarios where planning and budgeting has been brought to bear to help with forecast accuracy and related things. But I think what's interesting, beyond the operational systems and the core finance systems, there was a particular airline example where their route planning profitability was viewed as a very high value bit of insight that they would be able to derive from all of the costs associated with running an aircraft and capacity of the aircraft, etc. But they were using the sort of analytics and forecasting capability within the planning budgeting tool to allow them to kind of see where break-even occurred and where profitability occurred, and as a way to kind of maximize margin.
Fantastic, thank you, David. Martin, I think you had the next example of a media company.
Yeah, so media organisations that we're working with who are highly acquisitive, so they're out there in the market and they're buying lots of other organisations. The parent company that is actually doing a lot of the buying already has a planning, budgeting, forecasting solution, but upon buying some of these smaller organisations that are looking to bring into the group, they've discovered that those organisations themselves don't have a planning, budgeting, forecasting tool in any way, shape or form, and are relying on spreadsheets. So the decision that particular organisation has taken is to actually deploy to those acquired entities a cloud-based planning, budgeting, forecasting tool with a standardised model that allows the group entity to then get the information that they want and need to be able to run those businesses, and actually connect them together. So they're working to actually connect then those cloud-based planning, budgeting, forecasting tools that they've then got within those entities up to their group-wide enterprise solution, to enable them to get insights and information across the whole of the business going forward.
Fascinating, thank you, Martin. David, your next example was from construction, I believe.
Yeah, so it's an interesting area. I mean, we have a lot of construction customers who clearly are running often very complex, capital projects. So the execution of those projects and allocation of resources on those projects, and many of the complexities around how the resources are best applied and what they bid for. But we found there's an area, CVR or cost value reconciliation within the construction industry, where the planning budgeting tool is actually helping them to track with more granularity some of the costs incurred during the delivery of the project, to understand some margin leakage and things, so additional costs that were being incurred that they hadn't either anticipated or weren't really responding to in a particularly efficient way. So this kind of construction industry dynamic, it's very common that the complexity of the projects often lasting many, many years. There are a lot of points within the project where costs are, will have a margin impact, and they're finding that if they had a broader perspective on how to manage those projects a bit better, both in terms of understanding which projects they should bid for and which ones they shouldn't bid for, but when projects are being delivered, to kind of filter up and distill from the various systems that are being used to address that area has proved to be a lot of value to these companies.
Fantastic, thank you, David. Martin, I think your last example was an information services business.
Yeah, so working with an information services business that has over 10,000 employees within their organisation. So very big organisation, large organisation with a number of employees. Some of those employees work in functions like finance and HR that we're talking about, but there's also a large number of them that work in call centre type operations and in terms of back office support. And so the way they're using the planning, budgeting, forecasting solution is to go and sit there and enable them to take data from their HR system, which is actually an on-premise HR system, load that into their planning, budgeting, forecasting solution, and actually then run a whole load of what-if scenarios over that data and say, well, hold on, if we change the structure of our organisation, if maybe we move some of these individuals that we have on temporary contracts to permanent contracts and vice versa, can we actually get an efficiencies within the organisation? What they're also doing is linking some of that information, especially around the call centre, to some of the actual volume information that they're getting around, say, service incidents. So actually, there's some people in the the business who are sitting there going, okay, we can predict that, you know, the number of calls over the next 12 months is probably going to increase because we might be releasing a new product or a new service. And off the back of that and the sort of average call volumes that they know that generates, they're then actually going, okay, well, let's forecast the amount of people that we're therefore going to go and need to deal with that. And they can look at some of the peaks and troughs and actually try and iron that out and ultimately end up with a better situation in terms of their overall staff costs within that organisation.
Fantastic, thank you, Martin. Ringing the changes in the call centre there. Yeah, so David, your last example was around a lending company, I believe.
Yeah, so another popular area in terms of, to Martin's comment about the sort of predictive elements or what-if elements, there's a few sort of challenger organizations in the States who are in the financial services, ostensibly business, but their lending model and the use of the tools, the planning budgeting tools, and some of the capabilities that you can kind of say, well, what constitutes, what are the data points we need to capture around those companies that would represent the least risk and ideally the most secure or profitable lending clients. And whereas some of the larger banks are kind of lending money across a broader spectrum, and their risk profile is kind of, they sort of almost accept some of the higher risk loans to ideally focus on the higher margin ones for the least risky ones. But these companies are kind of using the tools to predict what the characteristics, the demographic, you know, who they should target in terms of high net worth or high value organizations or individuals to loan money to, but they're able to just focus on the business that's going to be most secure and most profitable for them. And the banks clearly are not particularly happy about this because those are the creme de la creme in terms of, you know, who they want to focus on. So it's just interesting. Again, it's part of the disruptive nature of the market that there are companies who are leveraging the cloud, leveraging the tools to focus on what could be the highest margin business for the traditional lenders, but they're eating their lunch, as it were, and sort of, you know, moving into that space.
Fantastic. David Hobson, thank you very much. Martin Sherman, thank you. And thank you for watching. And also thank you to our sponsors, Oracle, for helping this session to happen. If you're interested in the full webinar on connected planning and budgeting and how the cloud can help with this, click on the link below and register to watch the full 1 hour session. I'm Tom Herbert for AccountingWEB. Thank you very much and goodbye.